Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all, hey, what's going on? This is Crystal Taylor, the owner of Fitness is Not a Game, and you are here with me now on Fitness Friday, where we're going to talk about an issue that is real deal. We're talking about childhood obesity and just childhood uh, eating habits that translate into how we eat as adults. So if you're here with me now, say hey, let me know that you're here. If you are catching this on replay, do me a favor and type replay in the chat. But I was asked, I got to get on my foot. I was asked to have this conversation after last week's conversation. If you didn't check out last week's Fitness Friday, make sure you do so. We talked about the difference between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat, right? A lot of us, subcutaneous fat is the fat that we're looking at that's under our skin, right? That's what we see. Visceral fat is the fat that's surrounding our organs that could kill us, that can unalive us, as they like to say, right? Cheers. So I was talking about how people focus on the wrong thing, and there's nothing wrong with vanity. We want to look good, and it's important to, minimize the amount of fat that we have, right? But during that conversation, it was brought up about childhood obesity. And I'm like, yeah, that's a real conversation that needs to be had because how we eat as adults now, it's basically a byproduct of what we learned and how we behaved as children. Let me know if you take a moment and sit back and think about it, if you can agree to that. So let's talk about it. I was looking up some of the numbers and they're scary. Now let's talk. Okay, backtrack. Boop, boop. A few things to note. The obesity standards, the standards of being overweight, those come from the BMI, right? The body mass index. If you seen my book, read my book, heard me talk about it before, you know I'm not a big fan of the BMI. Not at all, right? Because it's been used as a determining factor on whether you're healthy or not. And that does not sum it all up. However, I'm not going to throw it all away because there's something to be said about knowing how much of your body is made up of fat. Okay, because fat is not the healthy part. That is not what we want. So when we're talking about overweight versus obesity, you're considered to be overweight if you have more than 25% of your body be made of fat. Obesity is when it's 30% of your body weight or more, you're considered to be obese. And there are different levels of obesity, right? 1, 2, and 3. So know that first. So whenever you hear me say obese, I'm talking about the amount of people who 30% of their body weight is made of fat. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about these childhood obesity numbers first. The sad part about it is that the numbers aren't good in general, period. But as they get older, so do the numbers. So now just looking it up, they said kids between the ages of 12% of them are obese. Not overweight. That ain't baby fat. They're obese. 12%, almost 13% of 2 to 5 year olds are obese. And then when you go up the next age range, from 6 to 11, we still talking about the babies who are in the elementary school, primary school, whatever you want to call them in your city or state. Now we're looking at 20%. 1 in 5 is obese, not overweight, obese. And then when they go to 12 to 19, now it's 22.2% are obese, not overweight. That's a huge difference. That's a scary number. But how and why are we getting there? Let's talk about it. These babies, 2 to 5 year olds. Can we have a real conversation? If I can keep it 100 today, please type 100 in the chat. And I might step on some toes today. And I do and I don't apologize for it. And I'm just being real about that because some toes need to be stepped on and possibly stomped if they're going to save these babies. When you are 2 and 5, you have zero control over what you're eating. Zero. Everything that you've been introduced to is by somebody else around you, typically some other adult around you. Whether it's that auntie that thinks it's funny to give the a 10-month-old a fried drumstick chicken bone. That's what we grew up on. And now you got the sugar and you got the pressure. But you're going to start this baby off like that, right? Or if it's the parent who just like, oh, let me make them, give them something quick in the car to quiet them down. Let me just go ahead and go through the drive-thru and get some fries. Sound familiar? And I'm not saying it should never, ever be done. But when we talk about 2 to 5-year-olds who are obese, that is from what they're eating. And typically it is processed trash. It is fried trash. We're putting into their bodies what we are eating. So we're keeping this horrible cycle going because that's how we grew up, or that's what we like now. And if I'm being honest, let me know if I can be honest. A lot of times because we're being lazy. We don't want to take the time to get them something healthier. We don't want to take the time to make them something healthier. We just give them what we're giving ourselves. If this is hurting, sorry. Not sorry. Because if it's going to help these babies, then let's talk about it. But a lot of times we're passing on these behaviors because that's what we know. We grew up like that. We grew up a lot of, raise your hand if you were a latchkey kid. Raise your hand if your parents worked multiple jobs. Raise your hand if you grew up in poverty. Raise your hand if you ever had to get free or reduced lunch at school. Raise your hand if it was a treat to get a real dessert. Or that you grow up on the big old sleeve of cookies from the store, the windmill cookies, right? There are a lot of factors that go into it. So let me say that it's not just, I'm not nitpicking and point fingers at parents. I'm not. But we have to talk about it because it's real. It is happening. It is part of the issue, right? But a lot of times we pass that on because of what we grew up doing and believing. We didn't grow up having conversations. Most of us didn't. And if you did, let me know in the chat. If your parents talk to you about nutrition, not food, but nutrition, let me know in the chat and shout out to your parents. Because unfortunately, what I've seen is parents talk about the kids getting fat. Ooh, you getting fat. Better not eat so much, you getting fat. Ooh, look at your little roly-poly, you getting chunky. Right? There's so much conversation about weight that we don't have enough conversations about health and nutrition. And when we have the conversations about weight, it comes across as very judgmental. And when it comes across as judgmental, now there's this comparison. Am I right or am I wrong? And let's be real. The foods taste good. That's why we like them. That's why we keep eating them. That's why we keep eating donuts, ice cream, French fries, pizza. They taste good. But when we're told that we're getting fat, we better slow down. Now we believe that we're doing something wrong, but we like it. And it's this weird juxtaposition on, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we want to do, all that good stuff, right? So then that's when kids start sneaking food, hiding eating food. And if that was ever you, let me know in the chat. If you ever snuck some cookies because you were afraid to let anybody see you eating them because they already told you, you better watch out. All of those things create psychological damage. But what if we reverse it? What if we talked about it differently? What if there was a conversation about nutrition that says, hey, you know what? Those cookies are good, ain't they, baby? But let's only eat however many. Let's eat 2 cookies just once a day or so. Because if we eat too much sugar, you know what happens to us? Not about weight, but you know what happens? Boy, that'll give us that sugar rush. You ever notice that sometimes you're real sleepy in school and you can't focus? Or you ever notice sometimes you're real grumpy? You notice that sometimes you don't have energy? That's from that sugar, right? If we talk about the nutrition and things that could happen, good and bad. Oh, but you remember when before the game, instead of eating uh, a honey bun, you had that banana and you killed it? One of your best games ever because you had water and a banana, and then we gave you some almonds too. Those are the types of conversations that we should have. Remember, you aced that test. So I say, oh, I want to keep feeling that. Those are the things I want to do the same way. Those are your goals too. Your goal is not to lose 20 pounds. Your goal is to have more energy. Your goal is to wear the clothes that you wanted to. Your goals are to sleep better. Your goals are to reduce your hot flashes. Those are the things that you're really looking for. But this society, let me know if this is resonating with anybody. This society has really made us focus so much on looks and vanity that the conversation about health is not had. It's not. You know, we're in a place that's all the way jacked up whenever you eat a salad or some grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, people are like, what, you on a diet? Why is eating the food that's good for you considered to be a diet? That's not a diet. That's a living. Mm-mm. Mm. The other stuff that we're eating, those are diets. They're killing us. The chips, and I love chips, the fries, the candy, the pies, pizza pies, all of those things. But those things are so readily acceptable. They're supported. They're encouraged even. That's what's for fun. But then it also ties into the money. Like, this is such a vicious cycle. Y'all, can I be honest with y'all? I'm going to be honest. I'm about to be real honest with y'all. I almost got sucked in that trap today. I just left the grocery store. And the grocery store here, their baked goods, like the bakery area, is really good. The donuts, the cookies, all that stuff. Don't get them often. But I was walking by and I just happened to look and I noticed that they had the donuts 2 for 1. And I said, oh, I should get some because the fellas in the house liked them. It's funny. I bought some for my son's birthday a few weeks ago. I had half a donut and that was fine by me. And I was like, but they like them. Now I don't get them often. They're 2 for 1. And then it hit me. I was like, this is how we fall into these cycles. Because it's not too often you see the good stuff 2 for 1. Not too often. One, we don't get too excited about it either, right? It depends on what it is, right? But they got these doggone half a dozen donuts 2 for 1. And because it's a deal, I almost grabbed it. And then I was like, no, that's setting my family up for failure. Because if they're here, they're going to eat them. Point blank in the period. Right? But that's what we're doing. We treat our children with food. We celebrate with food. You do well on that test. First day of school, I'll bring you some pizza. Last day of school, I'll bring you some McDonald's. For your birthday, let me bring some cupcakes. Oh, you got second place in the spelling bee? Let's go get some ice cream. Right? And that's something I talk to my clients about a lot. Like, we have to stop treating ourselves with food. That's the things we do with dogs. When they use the bathroom outside like they're supposed to, they get a treat. When they do the trick that we taught them, they get a treat. Why are you putting yourself on the same level as a dog? Why are you putting our kids on the same level as dogs? Because then there's a different type of motivation. Oh, I want to do this because I want to go eat here. I want to go eat here. Yeah, it's just the food. There is so many conversations, and y'all drop it in the chat. What else y'all want me to talk about when food? Because not about talk about when it comes to food, because I feel like we could have a whole bunch of conversations about our relationships with food. But what I absolutely know is that whether we thought about it before, or whether we wanted to admit it, how we eat now, we'll always go back to our childhood. Whether it was having to finish everything on your plate, whether you liked it or not, because it was there, because your parents worked too hard to get you that food and you weren't finna waste it. And it was starving kids over in Africa who would love to eat that liver that you don't like. Let me know if that's you, right? But we as parents, and that's why I'm having this conversation, talking to my parents, just highlighting this for you, just something to think about. Something to think about. Forcing your kids to sit at that table until they're done. It's not the key. Because they're going to get to the point that's telling me they don't get to decide when they've had enough. And that translates into how we eat as adults. We don't believe that it's okay to leave some. Because all we hear is somebody worked hard for this. I worked hard for this. Can't waste it. I can't waste it. But when you don't waste it, you're hurting yourself. It's going to cost you more in the long run in so many ways, right? Gaining weight. So now you are more at risk for health-related and weight-related diseases and illnesses, right? Clothes are bigger, so you got to spend more money on that. You have to wash more frequently because less of your clothes fit into the washer. That's your water bill, electricity going up, and your detergent. Possibly on medications. So now you need prescriptions, copays, all this stuff. It adds up in the long run because we are told that we can't push away from the table when we're satisfied because there's still more on there. How often you say, well, it's only a few more bites. I may as well finish it. Knowing you full. Knowing you're full. Already full. But that's what we're teaching our kids. If it's there, eat it. If it's there, eat it. As opposed to allowing them to practice discernment. That discernment is going to help them as an adult so that they can be healthy. And then on the other side of the coin, because we're worried about our babies becoming obese, as we should be, we're supposed to worry about all of it, but how we project it can come across in such an unhealthy way that, like I said, now these babies are hiding what they're eating and they're binge eating once they finally get it. They go to school and spend all of their allowance on junk. They go to their cousin's house and eat all the junk that they can find because their mom and their daddy told them they can't because they getting fat. Drink some water, y'all. There's so much that goes into it. So the suggestions, and as I said, it's not just about finger pointing, but what are some things we can do? I already talked about. Let's have the conversations about how the foods that we eat impact our bodies, whether it's good or bad. I don't know if you all watch Big Brother. I'm a huge Big Brother fan. I think I've watched every season since like season 2, season 3. But if you watch it, let me know. But this last week, the house guests had to stay in what they call Janky Land. So Big Brother, for anybody who doesn't watch it, is a game, like a reality game show, 16 people. It's a social game show. Last person standing wins, right? They get voted off each week. But they have different competitions, activities, all this good stuff. So this last week, they were like, who likes pizza? And they're like, yeah. Who likes ice cream? Yeah. So they just like, who likes games and fun and dancing and singing? Yeah. So they locked them outside in what they consider to be janky world. And in this place, they could only eat pizza and ice cream for a week. Let that soak in. Sounds cute and funny at first. And after a while, you're like, oh my gosh. Because I always tell people, if you're trying to determine whether it's a food that you can go hard on or should you hold off, I always say, if you could only eat that food and that food only for 3 days, how would you feel? If you would feel like crap, then that's the food you should sort of pull back on. And so now, after a couple days, they're sluggish, they're grumpy, they're all little random arguments and beef, can barely sleep, right? Have those types of conversations with our babies to say, hey, if we eat a lot of this is how we're going to feel. As opposed to this is how you're going to look. You won't be able to wear that outfit no more. You're going to have a belly. Look at your chin. That's not cute and funny. We shouldn't do that to each other as adults, but we definitely shouldn't do that to our kids. But it happens way too often. Way too often. But this is also what's happening. And I'm pulling my mic close because somebody needs to hear this. Even if you aren't saying it directly to your baby, what are you saying about yourself around your baby? Whether our children listen to us or not, whether we want to choke them or not, right? What I know is at the end of the day, parents are still superheroes to their children. They're not going to listen to you. No, not yet. But they still look at mommy and daddy as superheroes. And if mommy doesn't like how she looks and she thinks mommy is beautiful, then what do you expect her to think about herself? And kids do naturally go through chubby phases. Their bodies are changing. There are certain parts where they're going to need a little extra fat for their organs to grow, for their bodies to grow. It's a difference between being a little chubby and being obese. That's not what we're talking about, right? So they already noticed that their bodies are changing. And their bodies are changing at different time frames. So maybe somebody at school is already skinny, and maybe they're going through a chunky phase. Like, who knows? But they're already going through their own, and then they come home and they hear you talking about yourself like that. And so they're looking in the mirror like, wow, then what do I look like? So part of that is also being kinder and speaking kinder words to yourself. It goes a long way. Include these babies in the process of cooking healthier meals, because kids will try to pull it. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. Lies you tell. You eat whatever I make for you. You don't even know. I remember one time my son was like, I don't eat mushrooms. You eat spaghetti? Yep. You know how many mushrooms in that spaghetti? Cut it out. All right. But when you get them involved in the cooking process, and that gives you a great opportunity to have conversations about what you're cooking and why. Oh, let's make sure we get us some greens up in here, some leafy greens, so we can keep going to the bathroom, because we don't go to the bathroom, it's hard to sleep, stomach hurt and all that stuff. I don't want to feel that. That's way different from saying we need some greens so that we can lose weight. Let me know if this is making sense to anybody. Let me know. But we really, really have to monitor how and what we're saying to these babies, how and what we're presenting to them. I've always tell this story. One of the most amazing things I had ever seen, one of the most amazing examples of children only wanting what they've been exposed to. Remember, I said 2 to 5-year-olds are obese. Almost 13% are obese. And again, that's because what we have introduced them to. But when I had my first son, one of my girlfriends, we were in grad school, her daughter was a year and a half. She had to be about a year and a half, 2 years. I know she was walking. And my mom was in town, and because my mom had diabetes, she would always keep like little hard candy to keep her sugar right. So she had this little bowl of candy sitting like eye level on the table. I call it a table. I was in college, I was broke. It was really a trunk with a sheet on top of it. Look, let me know if you've been there before, right? But my mom had this bowl of candy sitting on top of the trunk. And my friend's daughter was going over there. And I was like, oh, I was trying to whisper. I was like, you want me to move those? Because I didn't want the baby to say, ask for it and, go crazy if mama told her no. And mama's like, she doesn't know what that is. I said, what do you mean she doesn't know what that is? She's like, she's never had a piece of candy. And I was like, what? She's like, she said, it could easily be this, anything else. She has no idea what that is. And I was like, wow, that is so amazing. But that's the thing. We're so busy laughing at these videos of these babies trying to steal the popsicles out of their parents' mouths and all that stuff because we keep introducing them to things that they don't really need. They're not even ready for, especially before we introduce them to the things that are going to help them grow healthy, strong muscles and bones and joints, right? So yeah, I just want us to have this conversation. And even if you are out of childbearing ages or whatever, and maybe you don't have small children, most of us are still around a small child. Grandkids, nieces, nephews, play nieces and nephews, whatever. I'm just asking you to be cognizant and thoughtful the next time you think it's cute and funny to introduce something that you probably shouldn't eat for yourself and your body is developed. Why would we put that into their bodies when their bodies and their minds aren't developed yet to be able to receive them? All right. So thank you for attending my TED Talk. I didn't mean to really go off like that, but when it comes to these babies and the way we're setting them up, we just had to have this conversation. We had to have the conversation. So I hope you found it helpful. Um, because it really goes a long way to at least think about it before we act. I've always said it's my mission to help at least 1 million Black and Brown families change the trajectory of our family's medical histories. And I can't do it alone. It starts with you hearing this, you making a decision, and you passing it on, and they pass it on. And that's how we get there so that we can reduce these mortality rates, right? Let's just be healthy and let's do better. All right. So that's it for now. If you got something from that, if that resonated with you, drop a fire emoji in the chat. Um, yeah, we could go on and on. If you have anything else you want me to talk about in the future, have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, send me a message, and we can talk about it. So, all right, y'all. I am Crystal Taylor. This has been Fitness Friday, where we talked about how food, feelings, and weight the translate from childhood obesity to how we act as adults. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope I earned the pleasure of your time. And if you have to go outside, please be safe because I just want you healthy, I want you happy, and I want you here. So I'll see you next time. All right, y'all. Bye.